Hey everybody, Economic Ninja here. I hope you are doing great. It's early morning down here in Santa Barbara, so hopefully the lighting's all right. Hope you're doing great. I've got a story out of a pawn shop that I visited yesterday, and I think it's very telling of the times that we're in. I want to share it with you and explain to you why this is so serious. So first, I'm in the pawn shop. I'm looking at jewelry. I love going to pawn shops, to be honest with you. There's all kinds of amazing treasures you can get there, and sometimes you can get some really good deals. Other times, not so much. Ironically, at pawn shops, they do tend to charge more than you would think that the average person would sell something for. But that's what's really interesting. Pawn shops make their money off of buying things very cheap from people because they do not value certain items, and then they sell them for way more to somebody that's like a collector, somebody that's looking for things. Well, I was in there talking with the owners of the pawn shop, and I've known these people for quite some time, but I haven't been in there in a long time. And I asked them how business has been. They said, "Oh, it's good." It's funny when you ask really surface level questions, you get a surface level answer. And it's not until you start diving in deeper with specific questions, probing questions, where you get the truth, the meat, right? Because that to most people is small talk. How's business been? Oh, it's good. It's all right. It's cool. The next question I asked them was, I said, are you seeing people, are you seeing more frequent people coming in and pawning items or selling items? And then the eyes got big and said, oh my gosh, yes. I'm well, do you mind answering this? Have you asked any of them why they're doing it? And both ladies at the pawn shop, they were separated by about 20 feet. One was hearing the conversation, one I was directly talking to. Both said rent at the exact same time. It was pretty impressive. So it was obviously a overwhelming amount of people right now that are pawning items and are selling their items are can't pay rent. That absolutely blew my mind because and this I'm pretty good at investigating things, right? I have pretty good skills of questioning, getting the real information out of people. When you see that kind of, and it was just rent both at the same time, you knew that that was legit, right? Well, I started asking some more questions. I said, so let me ask you this. How many people are pawning as opposed to selling? And they're saying mostly pawning. And I said, okay, so that means that people have the thought that they're going to be able to somehow, this rent situation is going to be over soon, and they're going to figure out a way of getting money to pay back the pawn and get back their item. They said, yes. It's a really interesting dynamic there when you go into a pawn shop. You have the choice to either pawn something, and then if you don't come back and pay back the amount that was given to you, like a loan, a short-term loan, they get to sell your stuff, right? As opposed to just immediately walking up and going, here, buy my stuff. And that's a very interesting dynamic. It's an emotional dynamic, if you think about it. The person having the hardship, the person having issues with their finances that cannot pay their additional rent. And I would love to interview some of these people in compassion, not to mock, because these are very serious times. I know what it's like to need money. Instead of selling my stuff, well, I would sometimes, and then I'd go buy more and sell more. I'd flip things. I'd go have garage sales. I'd find items I could buy and sell them. Or I would take on more work. I would find a second job. That was my thing. I wasn't there to like pawn, right? That's almost the end of desperation. You're just, because these people actually think they're going to have the money. All of a sudden, rent's either going to go down or they're going to find good fortune. And hopefully they're not the type of people that are going and buying lotto tickets. Because if I could interview them, I would look at their situation. What kind of bills do you have? What are you doing with your money? I mean, it's pretty serious, right? Well, so I asked some more questions and I said, what has it been like? So they're flooded with inventory, right? They've got this back room with all this stuff that's being pawned that within a certain amount of time, they're able to now push out to the store. And I noticed the store was flush with stuff. Now this was interesting. I said, where are your silver coins? Your case. And they go, oh, that's in the back now. And they didn't want to answer questions about that. And I thought that was very interesting because this store specifically I go to is a very, very busy pawn shop. And they have been known for putting a sheet over their case when silver starts to explode in price. And it's interesting. They're very savvy business people. They understand the precious metals market. And I've walked in there before and I go, oh, can I look at the silver? They're like, it's not for sale. Like, what? Because they know it's going to be worth more in the coming days. They weren't going to sell it. And when it was down, this was one of the stores I went to during the 2008 crisis when silver and gold had collapsed. And I said, how much for an eagle? And they said, $20. I'm like, spot's like 9. They said, it's $20. They're all, it's still worth that to us. Really interesting. So I asked them, I said, well, what was this like during 2008? Because I know you guys had your store, you've had this store for like 30 years. And they said, what was, or no, sorry, not 2008. What happened when the shutdown happened, 2020? First I asked that. And they said, we didn't have any inventory. It blew their minds. They said, here, all of a sudden, we have all this inventory that's going from pawn into the shop to sell. And these stimulus checks came out and people ran down to the pawn shop to immediately pay off their goods. It was insane. They go, we can't believe this is what was going on. They're like, they were asking people like, oh, so you got some, did you get the stimulus check? Yeah, here, pay it off, get my item back. And it was like the lottery for these people. But what was really interesting is they said they didn't have anywhere to put their money. That was one of the common threads. They said, and it's true, we saw this because the savings rate in 2020, when all these stimulus checks started popping out, exploded. It ballooned. It was at multi-decade highs, which, to be honest with you, for me, got me really excited. But if you go to the Federal Reserve's charts now, you can see that the saving rate has collapsed. Why? Because people that had it in the bank either figured out how to speculate in the stock market, the crypto markets, things like that with it, or they went and they just spent it on either, necessities or discretionary spending, right? And so that has now ended. But they said back then they were actually scared for their business, like I've said before, like what's going on with Target and Walmart, because they simply didn't have anything to sell. Everybody came in, gotten their stuff at pawn, or they came into the pawn store and bought their items, so they made some money there. They said, we've got no inventory. And inventory is super, super critical to a company or business, right? You have shelf space for a reason. And if you don't have items to sell in that shelf space and your store is empty, you're still paying rent, you're still paying electricity, you're still paying for your employees' salaries. Very, very crucial, right? But again, the point of all this is the mindset of the people that do not have wealth. That when hard times come, like, oh, my rent's exploding, I'm just simply gonna go down and pawn my stuff and I'll get it back later. That's not clear thinking, and we want to change that thinking, right? The reason why people are poor, there is, out of all of the people that do not have money, a very small percentage of them had catastrophic events in their finances attack them, right? Whether it be deaths in the family and things like that. Now, I could speak towards that because I have had 3 catastrophic events in my life outside of my control where I had a nest egg set aside. I had almost all of my debts paid off, and still things outside of my control took me down. But I didn't give up. And we want to change the mentality, the mindset of the poor and lower middle class. I want you guys to be brought up. And the first thing is that when you are faced with hard times and you don't have the money to pay your rent, I know it's hard, sometimes should look for a different place, possibly get a roommate, find an alternative, or work more. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. Or if you're going to sell something, don't pawn it, sell it, take the money, go and buy more and go flip that and then flip that and go hustle. Because if you get into that paradigm where you're always selling your goods or pawning your goods, you're gonna get into an eternal loop of being poor, all right? All right, with that being said, I thank you so much for watching. The Economic Ninja is out.